Good evening, everyone. My name is Debbie Keener, and I'm the head of marketing and special projects here at Oceanside Library. I encourage all of you to go to our website and visit our events calendar because we have so many great programs coming up this year. Sign up for summer reading. That's number one. We have some great prizes, so definitely do that. I would like to introduce my colleague and fellow presenter for tonight, Head of Adult Services here at Oceanside, Nadine Spano. And together we are known as Deb and Nay. We have our online book discussion every month. We have our podcast, and we sit next to each other all day. So that's who we are. And now I will hand it over to Nadine to introduce tonight's special guest.
I am so excited. Debbie knows I've been just thrilled. Thank you, Deb. You know, tonight's guest is Julia Whelan. And what could I say? Julia is a screenwriter. I have it written down. Lifelong actor, award-winning audiobook narrator of 500 plus titles. Amazing. You've heard her and haven't even known it. Her performance of her own debut novel, the internationally best-selling book, My Oxford Year, garnered a Society of Voice Arts Award. She is also a Grammy-nominated audiobook director, a former writing tutor, a half-decent amateur baker, and a certified tea sommelier. I knew I wasn't going to say that.
That's okay. Tea master.
I like tea master. There you go. Don't make me suffer. But you know, Julia's been the voice of some of my favorite characters. I feel like when you voice books, I listen to you on my commute to work. You've become a friend in my in the co-pilot seat. Like, it's just that voice that I hear. So I'm thrilled to have you. We're thrilled to have you. We've been talking about it for a long time. Julia, thank you for being here and for sharing your time with us.
I'm so happy to be here. I love doing virtual events because when would I live in California, so when would I ever find myself over there? And I love that we're able to do this.
Me too. This is great.
Great, thank you.
So for those of us who don't know much about you, tell us a little bit about yourself. What did you want to be when you were growing up? What was your childhood like? You know, and who was influential to you in your love of stories?
Oh, that's a good question. I grew up in Oregon. My father was a firefighter and politically active in the state of Oregon. And I always wanted to act. I was one of those kids who, 5 years old was like, when can I act? Can I act now? And I started acting young. I had very supportive parents, but not stage parents. They were just kind of mystified that I wanted to do this. But I was also always interested in writing. And I think part of that is I was an only child. And so part of it is like entertaining yourself. Like, I remember dictating stories to my babysitters that they would write, and then I would act out. So like very on brand from the beginning. Nothing's really changed. I was a child actor. I was on a show in high school. I've done a bunch of stuff, but like that was my main gig when I was in high school. A very good show that spoiled me for really good writing. But I still wanted to go to college because I wanted to write and I wanted to learn something and I wanted to have a backup because this industry is hardly reliable. So I left the business and I went to school. And while I was at school, I just focused on English and creative writing. I didn't act. And then I came back, though, fully expecting to kind of get my old job back and get back on TV. And that didn't work out. Typical actor stuff where I didn't have anything current on my resume and people had kind of forgotten about me. Everyone has the attention span and memory of a gnat. And so one of my best friends at college, her mother happened to be an audiobook director and producer. And she came up to me at my graduation and said, I feel like you'd be really good at this. And I was like, I don't know what an audiobook is. I've never even listened to one. But I appreciate it, but I'm like going to go back to LA and, and yeah, after about a year of being back in LA, and I was tutoring to make ends meet and just not able to get any acting gigs. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I was not expecting this. I called her and I said, okay, what do I have to do?
Right.
So I sent in a demo and she, cleared it with everyone at the company. And she gave me 2 books to come to Michigan. That's where the Brilliance Audio, that's where the company is, to record. And they were the first 2 books that I recorded. And I just loved it. Loved it. Nothing had ever been more me. And
Wow.
yeah, and I just was like, I'm in. What do I need to do? And how often can you give me one of these things? And I love it. And within a couple of years, I think it probably took 3 years or so, where I was doing enough to like support myself doing it. And then probably another 5 years before I looked up and realized, oh, this is my career now. And because you have the actor mentality of like the last job you do is like the last job you're ever going to do. And it took a few years of being like, this is going to be a consistent thing, if I want it to be. And so yeah, it was something that I loved from the beginning, and I've only grown to love it more. And I feel very, very lucky to have found it.
Wow, that's great. Really interesting.
What, can I just ask, what was the show? Was it Once and Again?
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
that the show? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it's a good one.
The last show that was like, if it had been on cable, it was like before cable, it was like the last really quality, critically acclaimed show before cable, and like network just didn't know what to do with it. So yeah.
Right. Do you do any acting on the side at all? Do you do something?
Occasionally. I kind of, about 5 years ago, I pretty much walked away from it. I don't actively pursue it anymore, but I still have, when a friend wants me to do something or something interesting comes up, I will do it, but I don't have an agent for it anymore. I don't audition anymore. I just don't. Yeah. It's like I've been in it too long. I don't.
You're over it.
Just doesn't feed me in any way.
And it's nice that you found such satisfaction from something you didn't expect with the audiobook narration. Like that's really, it's a very special thing that you fell into it and loved it so much.
It is. And I mean, I think that, because for me, I always just wanted to act. I just love acting. I love the idea of being able to inhabit other people's experiences and lives. And for me, I didn't enjoy the business part of it. I didn't enjoy the fame part of it. Those were always like things I had to put up with in order to act. And so this is like, I can act and people don't really know who I am. I don't get stopped on the street. They know my name or they know my voice, but they don't know me. And it's a really, it's just like the best of both worlds for me. And if I weren't acting every day, I would miss it. Like then I would have a problem, and I would probably still be trying to do on camera, but no, I don't need it.
Do you want me to take that?
Sure.
One? Okay, so it is audiobook month, and here at the
Yes, it
library,
is.
we feel it's every month. So there is quite a debate amongst readers that listening to an audiobook isn't real reading. As a prize-winning narrator and someone who studied literature, what are your thoughts on this?
So my thoughts are, I really do understand why people think that. I thought that for a while. But at the end of the day, first of all, it's ableist. First of all, it's saying that, people, if you can't read with your eyes, then you're not actually reading. And I don't like that. I don't like the exclusionary aspect of that. And then I also think that we've learned, there have been studies that we have the same retention, often sometimes better, by listening to something than by reading it. And so I don't know why. I would understand the argument where you're saying watching the movie is not the same thing as reading the book. But when my job is to read the text letter perfect, exactly the way it is written, you are getting the full unadulterated book. And
Right.
that is, you are consuming that book. And the other thing I'll say, and this came from a friend of mine who is stop me whenever, because obviously I can just go on and on, but
No, keep going.
a friend of mine who's a professor of literature in the UK made a really good point a few years ago, which was that when you're a good reader, an adept reader, you have a way of reading where you kind of self-select for what it is you like about a text. You can tell when it's going to slow down. You know, you see pages of description and you're like, okay, I can skip that. In audio, you can't really do that. You are really getting the text the way the author intended. You're not self-selecting it. So in certain ways, I actually think listening to audio is the more authentic version of the text than you would read when you're just skimming and you're left to your own devices.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think there is a skill needed when you're, and this might be exactly that, what your friend had said, there's a skill that you need to have when you listen to an audiobook too. It's listening to storytelling. It's something we really don't do much anymore. It's almost a lost art in a way. So it does, I know I've had patrons come to me and say, oh, I don't know, I couldn't focus, I tried. It takes time. And then you will suddenly, like when you read a book, it takes a little time to get exactly what you said, your rhythm, how you read, how you listen is also a skill. We're not good listeners at all. So an audiobook is something unique. And I do think it's, I always tell people, I think it's more than reading. It's better and more, you get more from it. And it really is storytelling at its best. Something that we just don't do anymore. So
I think that's very fair. And you know, I think that for people who, I think that's why narrators are important and why people follow certain narrators, because when you're trying to get into the voice of a particular book, like trying to just get into the author's cadence and stuff, it can be helpful to have a voice you're already familiar with, telling you the story. And, you know, I totally understand people for whom it's not something that they enjoy. I mean, I don't personally listen to audio, mostly because I don't have the time, but, so I don't judge anyone who doesn't like it, who doesn't enjoy it. I just don't think we need to denigrate it.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and this brings us to your performance because we spoke a little bit before the interview started, and it makes a difference who's narrating. And I hate to say that, but because I know everyone's doing the best that they can, but sometimes a narrator just is not giving you the visual of the story that you want. Your performances, and that's really what they are. And I think as an actor, that it comes out is a performance. There's actually a quote on a website I saw, and it might be, I don't know if it was a review, but it says, Julia performs using equal parts analysis, instinct, and emotion. And do you feel that that holds true to the work that you do? Do you feel that that is part of your success?
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty accurate. Yeah, because I mean, I bring to each text kind of like all parts of me, like the part of me that is the trained actor with many years of experience in that, the part of me that is the English major nerd who is like analyzing the text on that level, and then my own sense of empathy and I you know, wanting to give the listener the feeling that I got the first time I read the book. And like I think like that's the core task, is being a stand-in for the reader, like that conduit between the author and the reader, the listener, I guess, in this case. And so yeah, that's why it's a very unique skill. It's not all actors are good at it. Not all, you have to have this weird Venn diagram of the stuff that like I'm unfit for anything else.
I love it. Well, you really, I remember before I really knew who you were, listening to when I first started listening to audiobooks and thinking, oh, I remember this voice, but it was a different character. And now I'm listening to this character telling this story. but it does kind of, and it would catch me off guard a little bit, but I would then fall right into that story and with the new voice. And you know, I have to say the one voice that sticks with me that you did is the voice of Addie LaRue, The Invisible Life of Addie
Yeah.
LaRue. Oh, I actually did not even realize that was you until I finished the book, because I just got so wrapped up in it. I wasn't thinking, I was just listening to it, and the story was amazing. But you're French and the whole thing, the accents and everything. We're going to talk about that, everyone, in a little bit. But
Okay.
you know,
I love
yeah,
that book so much.
you have to only, there's only, you did that so well. I don't know who else could narrate that book that I would listen to. It's such a complicated, so many different things going on. You know, so it was great.
Thank
It was
you.
really-
Thank you.
Walk us through your process of narrating an audiobook. Like, what do you do to prepare? Do you read the novel beforehand? Do you research, you know, what the author intended for the book? Like, what do you do before you actually get in there and start narrating?
Yeah, so I definitely read the book beforehand because otherwise you get burned, where you are in the booth, you're doing something, and then you figure out, like, on page 400, that character you've established, suddenly the author's like, he said in his thick Russian accent. You're like, oh. So yeah, you've got to read the book ahead of time. And for me, my process is I keep I read it, I get a sense of the tone, obviously, like what genre is it, what category is it, how voicey is it, you know, what is the author doing here, what's the author's intention. And then I'm simultaneously keeping two lists. One is a word list of words that I either just need to look up because I don't know how to pronounce them, or they're words I need to go back to the author about. That are, I mean, it's anything. I over ask because I always want to try to serve the author. So like, even if it's a name, if it's Lara, is that Laura or Lara? How are you hearing it?
Oh, right.
So I always want that stuff to be as right on as possible. And then I'm keeping a character list of all speaking characters with any vocal traits that the author has given them and any biographical details that I think are important. And then I will take that list and start thinking about which characters feature prominently, which characters are often in conversation with each other, you know, do they appear in the same scenes? Is it a family? Are they in the same scenes together? And then I can start figuring out character voices that will be differentiated enough so that the listener can understand when those four people are in conversation or something.
Wow.
So all that work happens before I go in the booth. And at that point, I've emailed the producer, the author, and I've had conversations about it. And I kind of know my plan of attack. And then I go into the booth and I record myself mostly. Sometimes I have a director, but rarely. Usually I'm just recording myself and sending off files for proofing. And so someone is listening then to the files and they send back corrections because I will inevitably say something wrong. I tend to edit when I'm reading. Like if something's clunky, I like fix it and they're like, nope. And then I send back the corrections and they sweeten it up and make the finished product.
So do you have a booth at home? Like when you're saying you do? Okay.
I do. I'm sorry. I'm in a hotel right now and I'm not near my booth, but I was hoping to be able to do this from my booth, but just imagine there's a lot of foam. It's very black and there's a lot of foam.
Okay. And what do you record on? Do you have certain equipment or do you just use?
I've got the professional equipment. I record on Pro Tools, which has way more functionality than I need. Like anytime it pops up some alert or message, I'm like, can I just press record and press stop? And like, that's all I need to do. And I have like engineer friends who have come and like set up my thing to the right specs. And I've got a good microphone and, you know, it's just things that over the years I found that I like. My nightmare situation is when any of this has to be updated for any reason, like
Yeah.
no software updates, nothing. I go until things stop working.
Right.
I can relate to
So,
that.
Yeah.
yeah.
How long does, you mentioned the process from beginning to end, how long does that usually take, or does it like typically how long from when you know, get in the booth and start to the finished product that you hand in?
So I tried not to at this point in my career and with everything else that I do in my life, and just as I get older and my like insane lack of focus, I try to not do more than 2 finished hours a day.
Okay.
And that means like 4 to 5 hours in the booth, typically. So, you know, if the average audiobook is like 10 hours, I'll do it in a week, a work week.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Because you've done
Yeah.
so many, and it sounds like such a long with the edits and all of that. I didn't even realize that. I mean, obviously, but I didn't realize you send it in, they send it back, and you could go
Yeah.
back and forth quite a bit.
I mean, at this point, from like the moment I'm offered a book, like I get an email saying, do you have time to do this book? And assuming I do have time to do it, and I do the prep, like, and then by the time the pickups come back, and I mean, it's like a 4 to 5 month process usually.
Oh, wow.
Like 3 months of scheduling of out, and then recording it, and then usually like a couple weeks, a few weeks at least of pickups, and yeah. And then another month before the book comes out. Usually the audio is completely wrapped, or at least it should be ideally, by at least a month before the publication date.
Oh, okay. Oh. So you just mentioned, do authors reach out to you, or do you sometimes contact your favorite authors and ask them? Like, how does that work?
No, the authors don't reach out to me. The publishers reach out to me. Sometimes at the behest of the author.
Okay.
But it always comes through the publisher if the author has a publisher. If the author is indie, I don't have time right now to do indie productions, but I also will be contacted directly by authors who are trying to produce their own audio. And then I send them to friends. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I can't, but ask them.
Right. Have you gotten some of your actor friends who may have, you know, if their career stalled, have you tried to maybe have them come into the audiobook world?
Well, that's the funny thing about actors, and like it's always kind of a ha 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 thing that I lord over them whenever I can, because when I was first starting to do this, they were like, what are you doing?
Right.
What? And you know, the money's not great compared to on camera money, but it's also consistent. Like I work, and so so you know, it started out as this big like, what are you doing? And now it's like, so can I get in on that? And I often say to people, like, it seems like a good idea, but it's different from other voiceover work. It's very different from commercial or animation, or it is a long haul performance. It is you are a reader first and foremost. You're not even an actor. You have to be a competent reader. And you have to be willing to do these things in isolation. And most actors, that's not what they get into it for. They get into it to have the feedback from an audience, or they get into it to work with other actors. That's not what this is. So it can be very quickly unsatisfying. So I usually try to convince them not to do it. And then if they persist, you know, I'll work with them a little bit. I'll help them do a demo, but I really have like a fire test at this point where I'm like, you need to go into a closet and read for 8 hours before I will even like talk to you about this. You have to decide if this is worth it.
Right. Yeah, because that has to be, like you said, for an actor, you kind of feed off that, you know,
response from people.
So to be in the closet with your clothes reading may not be,
but you don't have to wear
no, it's a different,
you know, you have to wear your jammies if you want.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there is no glamour to this industry whatsoever. And so that's the other thing that's like a little discombobulating to actors, is like no one's bringing you blue M&Ms here.
Yeah.
Like no one is, there's no writers in
Yeah.
this, and like no one's doing anything for you. So just really decide if you like this, because otherwise, no.
And, you know, we were talking a little bit about authors and publishers and how you come about getting this. So once you do have a novel and you've read it, are you able to speak to the author? Like, are you able to give them your thoughts on how a character will come to life for you? And how much feedback do you get from them on the book and vice versa? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, I think that's changed a little bit. Like it used to be, there was really like a firewall between, you were not allowed to talk to the author. And I actually think it was more to protect the narrator from like meddling authors, because it's a very sensitive personal thing. If someone is reading your work out loud, and a lot of authors have a lot to say about that. But I think as the industry has evolved, and as more authors just generally have realized that they need to care about this, I've started to see contracts change more, where authors do have approval over narrators, where that wasn't happening before. They want to be more involved in the process. And so maybe it's different for me personally, because I think that publishers and producers like generally trust me to talk to authors, like maybe as an author myself, like they know I'm not going to get weird and actory or something. I don't know.
Right.
But I like obviously talking with authors, and sometimes it's really warranted. Like I have a YA series that I do called The Black Witch. And that author, Laurie Forrest, and I talk through every book, because she just keeps coming up with new species and like cultures in these books. And I'm like, what is this supposed to sound like? What does this language sound like? What is that? We have to have those conversations. Speaking of Addie LaRue, V was someone who I was so excited to do this book, and she wanted me to do this book so much that she like finally bludgeoned them into contacting me about it. She was like, this is the only person I want for this. I had her voice in my head when I was writing it. Like, she has to do this, so make it happen. And I'd had it on my radar, like just as a reader. It's like, oh, I'm going to want to read that. And so when it came through, I was like, yes, of course, I'll make it happen. And then when I read it, I was like, we have to talk about how the best way to do this, because as you know, like the trick of that book is that nothing's linear.
Right.
And we got on Skype. This was like a height of the pandemic. She was in France. I was in California, and we got on Skype and we just like talked it out of, the challenge here is like what I said I wanted to do is I wanted to try to create a character where she doesn't age. She's 24. She doesn't age, but a couple of things happen vocally to her. And one is that her accent diminishes to the point where it's almost not noticeable. And I also wanted to somehow be able to create the weariness in her voice. Like, her voice is still that of a 24-year-old girl, but she's seen 300 years of stuff. She's been through it. And so like, I said to her, I was a little nervous to establish an accent, a very thick accent up front, because I didn't want it. It was my own ego getting in the way, but I was like, I don't want the listeners to think I can't hold the accent. That they're gonna be like, why is she going in and out of it? But it really was a lesson in like trusting the listener. Like, the listener would get what I was doing. And but V and I had to really talk that out about the best approach and the best translation of what she had created.
I really got that. I'm telling you, that's one of the first things I said after I finished listening to that book was, I cannot believe the audiobook narrator. Again, I did not realize it was you, but I think one of the first things I said was, I cannot believe how the accent just gradually changed over the course of time. Like, it really sucked you right into what that character was going through, and you did it well.
Well, good.
Yeah,
thank you.
That was great.
Thank
I think
you.
it was one of my favorite books to listen to.
You mentioned that, numerous times, that was your favorite book to listen to.
Just amazing. So
thank you.
Do you ever, I'm going off the
Yeah,
script,
go off script.
but do you ever read it? So if a publisher approaches you and says, we want you to narrate this book, do you ever read it and go, no?
I never read the books before I say I can do them, because often the manuscript won't exist yet.
Okay.
And also I don't have time to read a book I'm not going to record. So I have to just go on the author, the synopsis, the way that the relationship that I have with the producer who's giving it to me. Sometimes they will flag things for me if like they think something is, problematic in any way, or we need to have a discussion about it.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be an automatic no, but it's the same principle, like trigger warnings or something, like just so you know, this is in there. So yeah, I've never had a thing where I've read it and then said, actually, I can't do this.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So many readers and listeners know you as, as Nadine said, the voice of their favorite character, such as the one from Gone Girl, which was really a breakout for you. Tell us about that experience.
I was just reflecting on that recently because it's the 10-year anniversary, which is
it
crazy to
really?
me.
Wow.
Yeah. The end of May was 10 years. And the producer of that, who is now someone who cast me in so much, and we're good friends, and but that was the first time she'd ever cast me in anything, and up to that point I was doing a lot of YA. And so we were talking about recently, I was like, what made you think to reach out to me? She's like, I don't know. Like we couldn't track back to how that had happened, other than she did know Once and Again, and she knew my work from that. And I think that she thought, she knew I was doing audiobooks, but then she thought I would actually probably have some understanding of this character who had been like, basically grew up in the limelight because her parents wrote children's books about her. And like, so she knew she had that like kind of pressure of being famous young. And so I think that was where it came from. But Gone Girl was the only book I have ever read. I read like the first 10 pages of it, and I just knew it was going to be huge. And it's the only time I've ever been right. Otherwise I don't really have an eye for things that are going to take off. Like there are plenty of books I think are amazing that don't get the recognition I think they deserve. But that was just one of those. That was lightning in a bottle. That was just incredible. But again, audio wasn't really huge. And the other thing Kelly, the producer, and I were reflecting on is that we both get the comment a lot that was like a lot of people's first audiobook. And I think it's because it was such a zeitgeist thing that everyone was like, I want to be in on this. And it was the first time that audio was kind of like easily accessible, downloadable. And so a lot of people came to audiobooks through that book. Yeah.
When we were talking about how you speak to the author about some of their thoughts on a character and how you speak for a character, you have a way of changing your voice in such subtle ways. It's amazing, whether it's an accent or the age of a character. How do you come to settle on what the right sound is? Do you have to like record yourself and listen to it and then, listen back? And how do you remember with multiple characters which one has that accent and which doesn't? I know you said you have some notes there. And how do you avoid stereotyping too? Because that's, something we tend to do a little bit.
It is. Yeah, a lot of it's trial and error. A lot of it is just having been, I remember when I was first starting out, like I would take some pretty big swings and then I would listen back and be like, I don't hear all of the effort I put into that. Like I blew out my voice trying to like reach some really bassy guy voice thing. And I don't even hear it. Like it's no payoff. And so you learn like kind of what works and what doesn't. And as far as keeping track of characters, I keep sound clips while I'm recording in the Pro Tools session. And then if it's a series, I keep every character, because I don't know if someone's going to bring that person back, like resurrect them from the dead. Books in. So I just have like a file of character voices from
Wow.
any book I keep.
Wow. I know you did, you voiced the story of Educated too. And that was a memoir. So that's kind of unique because you were voicing an actual existing person. So what was that experience? That's totally different. What was that experience like for you?
That was, I mean, to me, it was like, that was such an incredible book that I think actually, on top of everything else and the amazing story and how incredible Tara is, I think that it also in publishing kind of changed how we think about memoir.
Yeah.
Where she was so literary. She had it was so beautifully written on top of everything else. And it was the first time I had seen, I'm sure it had existed before, but it was the first time that I had seen an author of a memoir be able to say, I'm not actually sure what happened. Like my brother has a different memory of this than I do. And I took my cue from that, her ability to have enough distance to not be angry anymore, even though I was livid. Like as I was reading it, I was so angry, but taking her cue from the place of like not judging the people in her life and not having that anger. And I really tailored my performance to match what I think she would have done, like what her intention was, as opposed to letting my own feelings take over. And I think that's a difference. Like in fiction, I give myself a little bit more leeway for interpretation. But in memoir, I don't want to do that. I'm really, really deferring to the author.
That was a great book. That was one of our book discussion books.
It was.
That's an incredible and a great book discussion book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And that's it for any, if you guys did get it, that was Educated by Tara Westover.
Yeah.
Did the pandemic change how you approach your work as a narrator?
No, we just kept rolling. Like because I already worked from home, that's where my booth is. Publishing timelines were kind of breaking down around us, like books were getting pushed or canceled, or it was touch and go there for a while, but the actual fundamentals of doing my job did not change. I was very lucky.
Yeah. I know the publishing world was in a little bit of the whole world was in, but publishing, there was so many issues with books delivered. We had book delivery issues, publishing timelines.
And we're still kind of in it. I mean, we're still dealing with supply chain issues. Like that's not going away. And I think that's another reason audio, frankly, did so well during that time period, is also it was reliably deliverable.
Yeah.
Like, people.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I think people became, they really tried. A lot of people became readers, even just my own friends, our own friends,
during that
who
time.
weren't big readers. What else was there to do? So audiobooks became something new to them as well. I mean, we see our
books at a moment. I just don't understand why. Like I've looked at the data on that, and I'm really trying to understand why Backlist did so well, but like new books could not get any coverage. I mean, the people I know who had to put out a book during that time, especially 2020, were just like, I don't think it's old. I don't think anyone knew about it. And so I just it's amazing to me that all the bestsellers from that time period were Backlist.
Yeah.
Like I think The Four Winds, I think Kristen Hanna's book is the only new book that stayed on the bestseller list.
We've actually interviewed a few authors where their debut novels happened during the pandemic, and they were like, I missed out on, the big
to do,
everything. Well,
no one got to have events. No one got to, I know.
Right. Richard Roper's novel changed titles because
of the pandemic. Right.
It was originally called How to Not Die Alone.
Right.
We interviewed him. And quite frankly, it's a comedy. It's a lighthearted British comedy. It's a great book,
but it had to, because of the title, they changed it to
I don't know, but I didn't like the new title
Yeah,
at all.
How Not to Die Alone fit that.
Yeah,
book.
if anybody
But you're right, but no one was able to read any kind
He
of like
couldn't
satire
sell
at that time.
book. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was
No.
no way that book.
No
could-
nuance. We were not in a place where we could see that kind of humor. No.
Right. So,
We took everything very literally for a
Yeah.
couple years.
absolutely.
Oh,
You
God.
know, so you wrote let's talk about your debut novel, My Oxford Year. Did you write that during the pandemic as well?
No, my Oxford year came out in 2018.
18. Okay. And
Yeah.
was this a story you were sitting with? Like, how did that book come to be for you? And was it something that you were sitting with for a while, or was this a story you know, how did this book come to be?
No, it's actually interesting. I wrote about this in the back of the print book. I wrote for the PS section, there's an essay there. And then for some reason, which I cannot track back and figure out, I've been thinking about this a lot recently because I just did it for the new book. I didn't record the essay for the audio. So like people who listen to the audio don't have this story, but I was screenwriting and I was hired to work on a screenplay about this story that was set in Oxford. And I kind of was brought in as like the Oxford expert with a friend of mine who also went to Oxford. And we were giving notes and we were doing rewrites in a typical like studio way. And there was just so much I wanted to say about this story. And I had so many opinions. And the producers over the course of the year that we were working on it got to know that about me. And one of them came up with the idea. She said, do you think there's a book here? And I just honestly felt like nothing had ever wanted to be a book more. That in a way, the screenplay already felt like it had been adapted from a book. And there was so much I wanted to talk about around death and dying and grief. That was what I was dealing with at that time. And I just saw this as kind of like the perfect vehicle for that. And I had a lot to say about Oxford and being like American abroad. And so I just said, yes, I would love to do this. And I made the story the way that I wanted to tell that story, like my version of that story. And they were very nice to let me do that. And so that was totally random. I had been working on 2 other books at the time. I did not intend to do that. It just kind of happened. And then I was suddenly like, oh, okay, I've got my debut novel is going to be this women's fiction rom-com with heart thing. I didn't even know what that market was. But here I am.
And you have, so the next book you have is being released next month, right? August.
Yeah, August 2nd. Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
And is that something you were working on is that one of the books you were just telling us about that you had been?
Nope.
Oh my goodness.
The main character though was taken out of one of the books I was working on.
Okay.
I scrapped that book, but I kept her and moved her over to this one. So,
okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think it has something to do with audiobook narrating.
It does. So it is about audiobook narrators. It is which again, I was like, when I was thinking about writing this, the idea has been percolating for like 10 years since I started doing this job. I wanted to do something about audiobook narrators who narrate romance because I find it hilarious. And back when I was really doing a lot of it, I was like, this is so weird. And like I knew it was ripe for something. I just didn't know what. But after my Oxford year came out and, I was thinking of what else I wanted to do, the next book I wanted to write, the main concern that my editor had, my agent had, and I had was, I don't know that people care enough about audio. Like, I don't think it's a big enough world that people are going to care. And then it just continued to kind of explode. And I was like, I think we're good now. Like, I think people at least have heard of audiobooks, even if they've not thought about the people behind them.
Right.
So it is about a former actress turned audiobook narrator who is a bit cynical and started her career recording romance, but got out of it as quickly as she possibly could. She just doesn't believe in what romance is selling. but she has a grandmother that she cares a lot for, and she's given the opportunity to make some pretty good money recording like one last romance audiobook. And she agrees to do it, and her co-narrator is the biggest, hottest, most enigmatic male star of romance audio, and they get to know each other through this recording process. And it's a very loving send-up of romance. Like there's a line in there where she's like, I feel like we fell out of the romance tree and hit every trope on the way down. And that's the basic structure of the book.
I love it.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
We're definitely looking forward to that.
I know we have a bunch of questions,
We
so
do,
I'm
in the
thinking we
chat.
should probably get to those. Thank you, everyone, for being patient with your questions.
Yeah,
I knew some of
thank
them
you.
might be answered in our discussion, so we'll get to those.
Okay, so Marcia asked, I missed the name of the show Julia acted in. Please repeat. And it was Once and Again.
Which doesn't matter because you can't see it anywhere.
Yes, everything comes back again.
It's not streaming anywhere. So sorry.
Oh. Did you have to study different accents?
Yeah. So as an actor, I always had kind of just like a go bag of like basic regional American accents, standard European accents. But this job has thrown up some that I had never put any effort into before having to do this job. So yeah.
Again, some of these may have been answered, but we'll just read them out. How many times does she read a book before she makes the audiobook?
Definitely once, that's the prep read. And then sometimes a second time if there's like particularly tricky passages or a voice that I'm finding a little bit hard to dig into. So yeah, it depends on the book, but definitely once.
Okay. Marcia also says that she sets the speed to 1.25. I get that, Marcia. I do that too sometimes because it flows better for her. What are your thoughts on that?
So I used to be very anti-speed. 1.25 is fine, but like the people who listen to 3 times speed always I was just like, then why don't you're not getting anything I did. Like
right.
I made very deliberate performance choices. And now I sound like Minnie Mouse, and there's no pauses and there's no breath, and like, you're not getting my performance. I hope you're still retaining the story, but you're not getting my performance. I changed my mind on that recently because there was a really illuminating Twitter thread about someone who had said that they couldn't read, they couldn't listen, their ADHD wouldn't allow them, but when they figured out they could bump up the speed, suddenly it was like running at their speed, the way the speed their brain was running at. Okay. And so it's game changer for them. So once again, I feel like do whatever you want.
Okay. So we definitely have some Addie LaRue fans.
Yes.
Do you keep a recording of each character to remember the voice? And you did say you do that.
Sorry for all the questions, but I'm fascinated.
No, I love it. We love it.
Marcia, do you only narrate one book at a time, or do you do a few?
Typically only one at a time, but if I'm recording one, I'm probably prepping another, and I'm probably doing pickups for a third. So like there's kind of usually 3 in rotation. Sometimes if I have to squeeze something in, I'll have to break in the middle and do that one and then jump back. I don't like doing that, but sometimes it happens.
Okay. Bree asked, what type of books are your favorite to narrate? Maybe not a genre, but a certain quirk or quality in a book.
I really like the voicey books. I really like, which you often get with first person, but a really strong omniscient third is also really fun. Like The Latecomer that just came out with Jean Hanff Corliss's book has a very, like what I would consider a kind of George Eliot level of omniscient narration that I think is just so fun and beautiful and just has its own rhythm, and I love it. I love a good rom-com, adore them. I feel that for me, so much comes down to a character that I can connect with, or characters that I connect with. So anything that really has personality and lets me live in those characters is a beautiful thing. And I'm a sucker for really well-written stuff. That's the literary part of me.
So when you're narrating a book, this is Marcia again, when you're narrating a book, do you ever say under your breath, this is really boring?
No. No, I mean, look, I think it's sometimes less. I'm very lucky that it's certainly at this point in my career, I'm getting really, really, really good books. Like it's just an embarrassment of riches. There were definitely times when I was first starting out where, you just kind of, my task, and I learned this early on and I still take it with me, is to find something that I love about each book and to find something that I can learn from each book. And that keeps me engaged, even when it's not a book that I personally enjoy.
Okay. Jamie, one of our colleagues, she has two comments. One, I love the way you handle male voices, and that's something that it very quickly, that quickly turns me off to a narrator. The conversation of audiobook versus reading a book. One thing I particularly love about audiobooks and your performances is that the reader gets the vibe of the book and the characters from jump without having to spend chapters losing focus. Jamie.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm in.
From jump without having to spend chapters losing focus on trying to establish the voices in your own head as a reader, and you get to spend more time enjoying the story. It's also great to switch off between listening and reading as you go through a book. Thank you for your amazing work, Julia. Never get tired of your voice.
Thank you. I think that's all true.
Yes.
Wait, was there a question at the start of that?
I think it was just comments. It was right, Jamie? You can chime in, Jamie.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about the spelling. I'm on my iPad and cooking dinner right now. But thank you, Julia.
No,
and
thank you.
He was the one who turned me on to you, and then I started realizing, oh wait, that's her voice. Oh wait, that's her voice too.
I know.
Nice.
One of our other colleagues, Gabriella, she says she agrees. Julia's voice gives us a comprehensive experience of consuming the book. You're able to dive deep into the heart of the story rather than getting distracted by details that might go against what you originally imagined as you were reading.
That is interesting. Okay.
So Marcia said, would you be able to give us a minute or two to perform a few of your favorite accents or voices?
I love it, Marcia.
Yeah, I actually, it's another thing I did, someone asked for that and I pulled up, of course, Addie.
Yes.
Because I can't just do it like off the cuff. I need a script.
Oh.
So let me.
Jamie, that's Marcia.
Oh, great. It's already up. It's still up on my computer. It's like I'm asked to do this all the time or something. I'm really not. So Luke was another character that I knew immediately who that guy was. Like a friend of mine who's an actor, I just saw him in my head. Her description was so right. In fact, I sent his picture to V and she was like, oh my God, like that's him. And I was like, right. So I kind of just was playing my friend, playing him. But even with Luke, in terms of how over the course of that time, he is also slowly learning to become human. Yeah. And so his rhythm changes, his dialogue changes, his expression changes. So it was a very challenging but very rewarding book on a number of levels. So I got to remember how to do this. So he says, questions she asked herself in the dead of night, moments of weakness when winter sank its teeth into her skin or hunger clawed against her bones, when a space was taken, a day's work undone, a night's peace lost, and she could not bear the thought of rising to do it all again. And yet, Hearing the words parroted back like this in his voice instead of hers, they lose a measure of their venom. Don't you see, he says, green eyes sharp as broken glass, there is no end besides the one I offer. All you have to do is yield. I saw an elephant, says Addie, and the words are like cold water on coals. The darkness stills beside her, and she continues, gaze fixed on the ramshackle house and the broken roof and the open sky above. Two, in fact. They were in the palace grounds as part of some display. I didn't know animals could be so large. And there was a fiddler in the square the other day. She presses on, her voice steady. And his music made me cry. It was the prettiest song I'd ever heard. I had champagne, drank it straight from the bottle, and watched the sun set over the Seine while the bells rang out in Notre Dame, and none of it would have happened back in Villon. She turns to look at him. It has only been 2 years, she says. Think of all the time I have and all the things I'll see.
That was amazing. Now I'm going to listen to the book again.
I know. Honestly,
Thank you.
You're welcome,
Marsha. You should record your face. Like just watching your face do it too was amazing.
We have a lot of, I record, I used to do during the pandemic, trying to get eyes on the books that I was doing, trying to help the authors. I started making reels on my Instagram, videos of reading, and people like really responded to it in a way that they were like, are video books a thing? Can video books be a thing?
There you
And
go.
I was like,
I think you should.
Okay.
That was amazing.
That was. I love you right in.
Yes.
Like you just want to keep listening. Gabriella said brings me right back to listening to Addie, right? It does.
oh, great. Good,
Love
good,
it,
good.
love it, love it. That was so
great.
great.
Oh, that gave me chills.
I mean, and Luke's character, like you gotta read, you gotta
I
listen.
have to listen
It's so
to it.
good.
So
Yeah.
we're at the end, but could we do our lightning round with you?
Yes, please. Sure. Of course.
So we're gonna just set a timer for
It's 1 minute.
1 minute, and you can answer as many questions as possible.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Which character from a novel would you like to have a drink or coffee with?
Luke.
Hello, there you go. What was your favorite pandemic cocktail or snack?
Okay, so I got into this before the pandemic, but the last word is a cocktail that features actually very heavily in Thank You for Listening. So yeah, it's my character's favorite cocktail.
Okay. What shows have you been binging?
I just finished Hacks, and I loved it. I have not jumped into another show yet. My self-soothe is Below Deck. I'm not a reality show person typically, but God, that show. Okay.
Okay. The theater or the couch?
In terms of being in it?
Yeah,
To watch a movie.
to watch a movie or
Oh, couch.
Yeah.
couch. Okay.
Yeah, even
All right,
before,
that-
even before. I'm never going back.
Oh, you know, oh, okay.
That's a minute, but we're gonna keep asking.
We have two
Okay.
more. What book were you forced to read, but then you enjoyed it? Like as a kid in school?
Yeah. Probably, I mean, I think probably Catcher in the Rye. Like, I love that book, but if you had told me what it was about before, I would have been like, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Can you recommend a book from an author that wouldn't be on our radar?
Yeah, sure. Tell me when to stop. I mean, okay, so Malcolm Brooks is an author who I absolutely adore. His first book, Painted Horses, his second book, Cloudmaker, those two books are historical novels, 20th century historical novels set in the Mountain West. I love his writing. Michael Cardos, I think, is an amazing writer. You know, my answer to this over the years, I would have said Emily Henry and Taylor Jenkins Reid, and now they're like who they
Yes.
are.
Right.
But when I was first started, I was like, why is no one paying more attention to Taylor's books?
Oh,
So yeah, oh man, there's so many good ones. Allie Larkin, incredible writer. She wrote The People We Keep last year, but her backlist is also great. Yeah, I don't know. I know we're way past the time now, but
Nadine
so
wrote
many
a
good
bunch
I
ones.
wrote
down.
them down.
Yeah.
I've been keeping
okay,
notes.
good. Good.
Yeah.
Well, we just want, honestly, this was a pleasure. We were so
Beyond
happy
great. Yes.
to have you come on, and now we're just like,
Ah!
we have it on, we're recording it, so it's going to be on our
It's
website.
great.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, thank you both so much, and thank you all for coming, and Marcia for your questions.
Yeah.
And Jamie for your essay. And I just I really this was really, really lovely. And
Thank you.
I can't wait until you're back in your library.
Yes, us too.
Thank
It'll
you.
be great. But thanks, Julia. We really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to your book. Thank you
Yes,
for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight, and we'll see you soon at our next program. So
Yes.
everyone have a good night.
Night,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank
Good night.
you.